So Kevin Coplin with ReSource Pro, Principal Tech Services. We have Haddie Jongema with COO of Equity Insurance, and here we're going to talk about conversions. And conversions is a growth engine, and about how organizations handle that operationally intensive part of integrating acquisitions. And we're going to focus on where conversions break down. What needs to be in place when you start, and how leading organizations are taking that on. So let's start here, Haddie. You've been a part of multiple acquisitions through your career, about 24. You've built operations at scale. When you think about conversions, where do they sit in the overall integration strategy inside of your organization, and who owns that?
For us, they sit at the forefront. You know, the data conversion is such a tiny spot on the overall acquisition integration process, but it can create so much operational drag. And so for me and my team, getting our team into one ecosystem as quickly as possible is incredibly crucial to success. And, you know, a lot of agencies that do complete acquisitions, I hear frequently that we've got maybe legacy systems over here, and we've got maybe even multiple legacy systems, and then we have our primary agency management system. And because the reporting doesn't talk to each other, it's incredibly hard to manage even on the day-to-day. And so putting those conversions at the forefront is incredibly crucial.
So at a leadership level, what do you think leading organizations do differently in that process? And how do they treat conversions as like a core function instead of just a task that needs to be completed?
Sure. Yeah, so I think I could answer that in one word, and that word would be clarity, right? You know, the risk in M&A is not change. The risk is unclear leadership. And humor me, I'll tell you a personal story here. So my husband and I have not one or two, but 4 Belgian Malinois canines. Have you heard of that breed? Okay, so
very
people,
intense.
Very intense, yes, high energy, etc. And frankly, monsters in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
And over about a 60-day period, my husband and I actually rescued 3 of them. And we had 2 that are litter mates, 10 months old, 1 that was 15 months old. And we live in Arizona, drove out to California, 10, 12 hours. We came back home, threw them right into the back of our yard. No fights. No chaos, other than the dog named Chaos. But the rules were clear, the boundaries were clear, the structure was present, leadership was calm, confident, et cetera. And I view M&As the same way, right? It's not that they're not messy and that change isn't noisy. It's that change is happening right now, and I'm here to lead you through it.
So building on that, what are the downstream impacts that conversions, or when conversions are not done well, how does that affect both kind of the operational and commercial side of things?
I think I will lead with, I have a 97% employee retention rate post-acquisition. And I think about every process from the end user, both the client experience as well as our team member experience. And I think about Monday morning when Joe Smith calls in for a COI or his auto ID card, right? What system do I go to? Do I go to the legacy system or do I go to the new system, right? Do I put a note in the legacy system and I check where the policy is in the legacy system, but in the new system is where I'm supposed to add the new attachments? So having that clarity around where to document and having the appropriate training for your team. Training can be 100%, but we also have to give time for the team to develop, right? And we need to give our new team space to be able to make mistakes. And so we can create just that consistency as we move everyone into one ecosystem. So not having clarity is really what creates dysfunction.
That's when things go right. Let's talk about when things break down a little bit and where they tend to go wrong. From the multiple acquisitions that you've gone through, where do you find conversions most often break down, and what risks are leadership kind of consistently facing, or that they underestimate as they're going into that conversion?
Sure. Frankly, there's no telling where they go wrong, right? Because every legacy system is different. You know, you and I could be on the same agency management system, but because we use it differently, knowing and trying to plan for everything is nearly impossible, right? So I think what's more important is that we define success and what those outcome and what our ideal outcome looks like on the front end.
Going off script a little bit, but
yeah.
How are you communicating that to the teams that are being acquired and making sure that they kind of embrace that uncomfortable change period?
Sure, sure. With clarity and open communication. It's about having consistent feedback loops. It's about checking in. It's about making sure that everyone knows this is going to feel messy. It's going to feel uneasy, but that's what we expect, right? And so it's kind of, if I was cooking, right? All of a sudden I have a grease fire. I look across the living room and there's a curtain fire. At the end of the day, the outcome is just get the fire put out. Doesn't matter which one we get started. Right. And so it's the same for the team. It's as we move forward, it's going to feel uneasy, but just embrace the uneasiness. And we know where we're going. The goal is to get us into one system and to have us working together in one place.
Kind of touched on, I guess I wasn't going too far off script. That's kind of where my next question is going to lead us. But when we move from kind of the breakdowns occur to the readiness and the preparation, are there specific capabilities or conditions that you're looking for or organizations should have in place as they're planning and before they start the conversion? Like what type of goals should an organization have?
I think very simply just a plan, right? As an operator, we're ready to get moving and we're waiting for that close date. As a leader, it's about making sure that your team has the sense of what to expect, the overall timeline. Everyone has clear ownership over what and which processes we're all responsible for. When there is an escalation or something that's unexpected, how do we navigate? A recent acquisition that we completed as a sample, we had, Microsoft has those pesky email signatures, right? Where everyone puts images inside of their emails. And so when you receive an attachment back, you've got 10 different attachments, right? So of course, we walked into an acquisition without the ability to check in during the due diligence. And so as we walk into the acquisition, we're expecting roughly 2,500 clients. Let's call it an average of 5 to 10 attachments per client. And we get into the project, and we actually find that there's 50 to 100 times more attachments, right? So is the plan to continue to move over all the attachments, or do we pivot and we say, okay, just pull what's essential in this case? And I think the other thing that gets forgotten about often when you are completing a transition is you also have the historical archive to think about as well, right? So you have a seller who's in the process of phasing out or transitioning over, whatever that maybe looks like. And as you're moving over the legacy system into your system, are you now becoming the legacy archive, or does the seller need to keep a copy for their purposes as well? Because they do continue to have exposure post-sale.
You think about everything that you need to have in place before it happens, and then the reality of the conversion occurs and that ability to pivot. So do you have plans in place for when that need to pivot, or is it more real-time readiness and game time decisions?
Yeah, good question. I think the plan is just understanding who the decision maker is, right? So there's clarity around who...
Stealing my next question. Okay. So once you have kind of those plans in place, the next question becomes ownership. So how does your agency own the conversions, and who owns those pieces of the conversion process? Like, who is the integration leader, and how do you feel an organization should set those up?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's today, because we're on the smaller end, so today a lot of those decisions are mine personally to make, but I also have a team that can make those decisions for me in the event that maybe I'm at a conference, for example. So I have a VP of Ops that helps provide clarity around those. Again, we do align on the outcome, right, and what the overall goal is. What we do make sure to have is a structure in place so that there's no bottlenecks that occur as that process moves forward.
So as your volume increases and pressure builds on that model, what do you think breaks in the traditional conversion approach, and how do you handle that slightly differently?
I think it's just staying flexible, right? It depends on what it looks like as you start to kind of open the present left by the seller. Sometimes they're really together, sometimes they're not, and it's very hard to navigate one or the other. And so it just depends on what information is important to you so that you can continue that client relationship.
Now that you've got many acquisitions under your belt, has your approach changed from like acquisition 2 to acquisition 25, and like what type of lessons have you learned through that process around that approach and leadership style?
Absolutely. I think it's been largely around what's important. Because originally we wanted to grab everything. And that meant, going back to that email sample, we didn't realize that, hey, we really don't need these little images that are just part of the signature. It's okay to discard those. In addition to that, sometimes there's been cases where there's such a high volume of attachments in old client files that haven't been active for years. If you're acquiring an office that's been in existence for 18 years, do you really need documents that are 10 plus years old for clients who haven't been active in 10 years? Initially we were really tempted to grab everything so that we had all of that archive. But again, as you kind of go through the process and you really start to refine what's important and what is actually necessary for the new agency to function inside of your system, that's where there tends to be more clarity.
So as you've got those repetitions under your belt, what does your scalable, kind of repeatable conversion model look like in practice? And what components do you need to have in place to be successful at that?
Sure. Again, I'll go back to, I think, the team, right? Having the right team in place, having your key partners in place, like a ReSource Pro, who can help you both stay flexible and stay on track towards accomplishing that conversion as quickly as possible to help reduce that operational drag.
So as you look ahead and working more with ReSource Pro, where do you think the biggest opportunity to prove how our industry handles conversions exists?
Sure, and kind of where to evolve.
Yeah.
Sure. I think the evolution comes with, I think ReSource Pro did it well and named it well with Capture the Shift, right? And I can't recall if it was Dan or Zach that had said it yesterday on Wednesday morning. It's the operational readiness so that you can be ready for that AI readiness, right? Be ready for the automations and having a partner like ReSource Pro that's willing to help you customize the experience. Because even within our industry, right, we have accord forms. Well, what does an accord form do? An accord form helps to standardize the same client file across a multitude of carriers. And with a tool or a vendor like ReSource Pro, we're then able to standardize that data conversion process. So regardless of the source data and the legacy system, we're now able to create a systemized approach to being able to convert that data into our system.
Last question. If you give one piece of advice to agencies that are starting, or maybe they haven't had an acquisition or are starting the next conversion, what would that be?
Don't manage your data, lead your pack.
Want to expand on that a little bit?
So having your team in place, right, so that there are no bottlenecks that occur during the transition, having clarity around the outcome that you want to accomplish, and having clarity around what happens to those systems, and making sure that your teams are fully aware of what to expect.
And having good vendor partners.
And having good vendor partners. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Haddie. I appreciate the time and sharing your perspective and your experience on this. Thank you all for your time today. If you're thinking about going on an acquisition and conversion experience, we're here to help support you. We have another session later this afternoon, our M&A integration suite, and how we can help you with that. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.